So I want to give you just a basic general orientation to how to use this chart with your patients. So this is what we use in the process of menuing. And in general, we start at the upper left corner and we move down this way in the chart. I'm going to go through the different pieces and explain it, and then I'll explain how to use the chart functionally. So each of these areas, they're all different colors, they're all labeled different things. This is cover-ups. We have a list of the things that tend to conceal problems when you're working with your patients in TBM. So if there is a cover-up, we can menu through and ask which cover-up is, then we know how to proceed from that point. We have a list of structure here. These are structural techniques that are taught in TBM. This last line here, Art of Adjusting Additional. Some of the items from Art of Adjusting are in here, some of the items are not. So the additional items you would go to when you come down to Art of Adjusting Additional, if that's where the menu took you, then you would have to get out the manual and menu the manual itself to see what was needed. There's also some lines here, and these lines can be used to write in any other techniques you have. So any type of structural techniques, or if you have a whole group of structural techniques, like a chiropractic technique such as Gonstead, you could write Gonstead, and if it goes to there, then you would pull out a separate menu just for Gonstead, and then you can menu through to see which technique you would go to then. We have a lifestyle box, emotions, needing use, body points, sugar metabolisms, techniques, and the vial sets. So these are the main things that we menu. This here contains essentially all of TBM in all the current modules, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, and M. They're all contained within here. So coming back to lifestyle, we've broken it down to diet, activity, sleep hygiene, posture, protection, and water. A lot of these are self-explanatory. Autonomic recovery, autonomic recovery meal. Caloric balance is whether the patient is eating too few calories overall or too many calories overall. So if someone's eating too many calories, the menu would bring you to lifestyle. It would then take you to diet, and then it would take you down to caloric balance, and then you can just test, is this body consuming insufficient, receiving insufficient calories on average, or excess? And if it's excess, how much? 110% or more? Yes. 200% or more? Yes. 300% or more? No. 250% or more? No. 240% or more? Yes. 245% or more? No. 244%? No. 243%? Yes. So then you would say to the patient, you're consuming 243% of the calories that are needed to support physiology. That's obviously going to throw things into balance, and so that's how that would come to attention. Next, we have dietary toxins. So if the patient is eating a food or multiple foods that have toxins in them that are creating the problems, it's going to come to you. So if it goes to dietary toxins, then you're going to ask, basically you want to know the source. I would just ask the patient, anything come to mind? And if nothing comes to mind, then we can start to test. Is this something prepared at home? Is it an industrial food? Is it a spice? Is it something that's only consumed when you eat out? you just use different categories so you can narrow it down to get to a specific food or multiple specific foods, potentially. Digestive hygiene are things that would go here if we're interfering with digestion. For instance, drinking smoothies, protein shakes, the different milks, and so forth. You're bypassing chewing. So you're violating digestive hygiene by bypassing chewing, for instance. Or if you're eating something that's high glycemic without fat, so the high glycemic food is zipping right through the stomach, going straight to the duodenum and causing an insulin surge, versus putting fat with it, which causes it to stay in the stomach and to be released more slowly. So, it'd be improper, food balance, basically. So, anything related to digestive hygiene. There are aperitifs, different beverages, different foods that are eaten in different cultures. In the West, we use black pepper a lot, which stimulates digestion. So someone, for instance, may not be using enough black pepper. Or at the end of the meal, they're not consuming the digestive like coffee or limoncello or things that are used to promote digestion. When it comes to food hygiene, this would be food that is improperly prepared. So like eating raw spinach. To reduce the oxalates, the spinach has to be cooked. So if you have a patient eating raw spinach, it's locking up nutrients and creating problems for the patient, the menu may bring you to that. Or not eating multi-hour or multi-day fermented grains and bread. So not having sourdough bread, but using quick rise yeast. Or not pre-cooking the rice in the dry skillet or in chicken fat or olive oil like is done typically. Or consuming pasta that's not al dente. Those types of things would be food hygiene. Genetic heritage would be eating foods that are not in congruence with your ancestry. So if you're an Indian and your family's been vegetarian for thousands of years, you don't get to eat meat. You got to eat vegetarian. But if you're from a different part of India, where your ancestors have eaten goat for thousands of years, you've got to eat goat. You don't get to be vegetarian. Or if you're from Scandinavia, you've got to include fish. Those types of things. So if the way they're eating is such a breach of how their ancestors ate, the menu would bring you here. Macronutrient balance. We can't thrive on 100% carbs. We also can't thrive on 100% protein, nor 100% fat. There has to be a mixture of those three. In the United States, presently, we tend to overdo carbs. So the ratio is skewed, as far as caloric intake goes, the ratio is skewed towards carbs and underrepresented in fat. It's not all that common. What's really common is underrepresented in protein. People tend to undereat protein in this country. So if your patient is not balancing carb, protein, and fat in a way that supports physiology, they will come here and you can test to see what percentage of protein are you consuming of optimal. If optimal is 100%, are you consuming 100% or more? No. 50% or more? Yes. 75% or more? No. 70 or more? No. 60 or more? Yes. 65 or more? No. 64% no. 63 no. 62 yes. And you do the same thing. Carbs. I've had patients at 300% of carbs. I just look at them and say straight up, you've got to cut out 2/3 of the carbs from your diet. And you've got to double the amount of protein that you're eating. So if there's a need for that conversation and those kinds of adjustments, that would come to macronutrient balance. Meal frequency. You have a patient that might be eating too often. A lot of people tend to graze. They never let their stomach empty. They never let the digestive system rest. Others don't eat often enough. And over time, that's going to change. If they're hypoglycemic, they're going to have to eat often. Once you work them through those issues and their liver and adrenals are working better, they don't need to eat as often. And maybe eating that often actually creates problems. So, yeast reduction is a specific diet we talk about in Module 3, same with autonomic recovery meal. Activity, amount, frequency, and type. I think it's pretty straightforward. You know, if they like to walk, but they're walking too much, they would go to amount. And you're walking 50% more than your body can handle. Megan and I have been doing 8 miles a morning for several months, and it was catching up to us. It was a little too much. I was noticing it in my body. So we've had to make an adjustment. Those types of things. Type of activity. Sleep hygiene. On our free resources on the website, I wrote an article titled How to Get a Good Night's Sleep. It's just the fundamentals of sleep hygiene, dark room, quiet, no electrical devices around you, things like that. Posture, at the end of Module 2 is a guide on posture. Protection, so this is energetic protection, and it's a very key part of TBM. We know about the vital wristbands. There's also the core essence protection procedure. That's on free resources. We expand and teach everything surrounding that in Module 4. Module 4, a big part of that is energetic shielding and protection, clearing negative energies from the space we live and work in, and so forth. So there are different techniques and things listed there. Water amount, frequency, salt intake, type of water. If you're European and as a kid you drank mineral water that is bubbly with gas, then you can drink that as an adult. It counts as water. But if you're from the United States, where none of us did that, we're going to drink it and the body's like, that's not water. So sometimes the type of water that the patient is choosing doesn't work. Some patients can do distilled and others can't. So that's basically with lifestyle. We come to emotions. This is a list of the emotional techniques that we have in TBM. Milieu is the emotional environment. So if your patient, every time they go to work, they're stressed, that's obviously going to get in the way of their healing. So the menu would bring you to milieu. You'd go to workplace, and you're just going to look at your patient and say, okay, what's going on at your workplace? Apparently there's something there emotionally that's upsetting, that let's look to see if we can figure out a way to deal with it in a way so it's not upsetting, or maybe it's time to get a new job. Who knows? I recently had a patient whose health was starting to reverse a little bit, and so was her baby, after she started taking her baby to a daycare. And we menued and came up with the milieu, and it was the daycare of the child. And we spoke about it, and what we discovered is she was concerned about the cleaning products that were used at the daycare. She could smell them when she would go there, and it just really tore her up to leave her baby in this environment smelling those chemicals and being exposed to those chemicals. So we talked about it, and I said, well, how about talking with the people that run the daycare and saying, would you mind switching to, you know, safer, less aromatic, you know, cleaning? And so she talked to them, and they're like, sure, that's easy. We can make that change. Thanks for pointing it out. So this big stressful thing, you know, was just easily resolved with a conversation, but it took our conversation to help her to go ahead and do it. So then we have the vial sets, the emotional. So if you get vial sets emotional, then we jump over here to the vial sets, go to the emotional column, and test these here. Need and use, these are the top priority need and use things that we teach principally in Module 1 that are listed there. Got a blank line, you can add something. If there's something you want to, it's a high priority for you. Body points. So the body points is organized as column 1, column 2, pathologies and systems, which all reference back to the body point wall chart. That's organized in the columns and then systems and pathologies. And then you can menu the numbers of those. Also here is Module 3, body points. At the end of Module 3, there's a whole section of body points. So you would go there and you would just menu through those pages. Sugar, all the heavy hitters, the top techniques that we use with sugar. 16-6 sugar, sugar infections, the sugar leg check, which is the Module 1, protein utilization, sugar metabolism, sugar poisoning. Metabolisms are listed there, those techniques, and then a whole slew of techniques. Most of these are in Module 3, but there's some from Module 2, and I'm not sure if there's any for Module 1. There's some for Module 4 and Module 5 and Module M also in there. So you can menu to those. Some of them like lipoma and resin, where it's a simple correction. We just put the levels there, so you don't have to look it up in the book. Others you have to go into your manual and look. Then we have vial sets. We've listed all the vial sets. As you know, we add vial sets. Typically, every time we have an alive, I think we added 3 vial sets this year, and they have to be written in. So we just left spaces here to write any additional vial sets. Up here at the top, we start our visit with high thymus. So we don't ever work with a patient who's in high thymus other than poison toxicity Cat 4. Then you can always check high thymus to see if that brought them out of it. But we always, at the beginning of a visit, we check high thymus. This is after you've run the basics. So when you're menuing, that's when you start it. If the answer is yes, this pushes you over to drain poison toxicity category 4. If the answer is no, then we run the vital scan. The vital scan is a collection of essential tests that we do at the beginning of each TBI visit. In free resources is a list of the current vital scan. Some of them come from Module 1, some of them come from Module 2, some come from Module 4 and Module 5. I'm not recalling anything that's in the current vital scan in Module 3, but you can look there for that full list. These are things that if they're offline, if they're a problem with your patient, you want to get them resolved before you start menuing. For instance, if they're in grizzly bear. So if they're in sympathetic dominance, that's your top priority before menuing any specific issue, because the whole body is degenerating. All the functions are going offline if your patient's in sympathetic dominance. So we test and correct those. Once we test and corrected them, then we characterize the symptom. So the type of symptom we would menu would be pain in the left shoulder with movement. We could menu that. We couldn't menu in the left shoulder joint. We couldn't menu, I hurt here, right? We want to be specific, and we want to characterize a symptom, not a diagnosis. You can't menu lupus or fibromyalgia or something like that unless you define it as a constellation of symptoms. So fibromyalgia is a constellation of 5 main symptoms: pain, fatigue, insomnia, cognitive or mood disorder, and fatigue. And so, I think I said fatigue twice, digestive disorder. Okay, so those are the 5 constellations of fibromyalgia syndrome. So if you know that's what you mean when you're menuing fibromyalgia syndrome, that's okay. But it would be even better, though, to break those out. Let's menu the cognitive disorder, fibrofog, a lot of times it's called. Are we finished with fibrofog? You know, we can work through that. So we want to get the symptom as narrow as possible, the more specific, and the more each word in the symptom has a specific meaning that both the patient and you as a provider understand, the more effective your menuing is. Kind of the garbage in, garbage out concept. If you don't spend time properly characterizing the symptom, the menuing is nebulous. So after we characterize the symptom, then we go through a process of backward thinking. That's from module 4, and that's essentially, you know, what could be causing the symptom. So a little bit earlier, Megan mentioned that she had some thoracic pain. I started backward thinking her thoracic pain could be structural. However, in the past, she's had her bronchi point blown, and that's resulted in thoracic pain. So I was just thinking about it before I started, and so I just tested it, it went weak. And then that's where we would go. So it's just thinking about it. We get really involved in the process of thinking about it in Module 4, and we train on how to backward think in a way to make menuing go really fast. Typically in a 15-minute visit, I can get through about 8 pretty significant symptoms. And it's because I take a symptom, I backward think it, then we run the menu on what I backward thought, and it's really, really fast. That's what backward thinking is about. But again, that's not going to mean too much to you until you do Module 4. Then we ask, are we finished with the symptom? So my knee was hurting, and this is part of what clued me in that I was just walking too much. I'd walk 8 miles and I'd go play tennis for a couple of hours, and I did that several times a week. And my knees progressively, especially my left knee, was just starting to be inflamed. Well, it did require some work. We did some work, but then it still hurt. And we realized that we were finished with the knee. There was just some pathology there that needed a little bit of time to heal. So I've rested now for a couple weeks, and it feels fine. So sometimes, even though there's a persistent symptom, you might be finished with the symptom. So we menu, we go through all the corrections until the body says we're finished with the symptom. Once we're finished with the symptom, we check high thymus. If we get a no on high thymus, if we're not in high thymus, we can do another symptom. If we do get a yes, then we just have to finish. So always after every symptom, check high thymus. Now at any point during the visit, you may need to run awareness. Now awareness we most often run when we have a reoccurring need to correct the same thing. So you correct their liver on Monday, they come in Wednesday, correct their liver again. Does this body need awareness? You just ask. Sometimes the body just isn't paying attention to what you're doing. But awareness could pop in anywhere. Once you kind of tune into what awareness does, you'll begin to intuit when to ask if it's needed. Either intuit or just cognitively, you know. Sometimes for me, if I do a big correction, I'm like, I don't want to run the risk of having to repeat this because the body wasn't paying attention. Does the body need awareness? I'll just ask. So awareness is kind of off here in its own little world because it could jump in anywhere in the process. So when you menu the vial sets, if it goes over to vial sets, you go to the specific vial set. Now, if it's autoimmune, there's only one autoimmune set. But if you go to environmental, there's 5 different sets. Actually 6 now, we decided in 2015. So you go to the specific set, but once you get to the set, you have to put the vials to the chest. And you can do that up to 5 at a time. You put 5 on the chest, get a weakness, then you do 1 at a time until you find out which one makes your patient weak.
So you can't just ask like a section, like, is it in this section, and I can't?
Not reliably.
Okay.
So it's reliable to do 5 at a time. You do 6, that's not reliable. So 5 is what's been found in TBM to be 100%. Remember our rule in TBM, 100, 100, 100, 100% effective at 100% patients for 100% providers. That's 5 at a time. If you have 5 and they're strong, those aren't the 5. You have to grab another 5.
Is that the same reason why you ask out loud instead of thinking it in your head when you test
We
it?
ask out loud because 1, you're involving a lot more senses when you do that. 2, you don't look like a witch doctor. When you're thinking through stuff in your head and a patient's arms going strong, weak, and all they know is their arms going strong, weak, and you're just kind of tilting your head back and forth, and you're like, okay, let's do this. They're completely out of the picture. They don't know what's going on. They might have enough confidence in you to do that. But they probably are thinking in their head, I don't think I'm going to send my husband or my boss in here and go through that. You see what I'm saying? It's, and I think it's impolite. You know, this is our patient's body. It's their body. I think they have a right to know what you're finding when you test. In fact, it's been found, it's called a talking exam, when any type of a doctor actually talks about the exam process while they're doing the exam, that it's actually healing. That a talking exam has healing impact in and of itself of whatever treatment might come as a result of what's found during the exam. So for several reasons, we encourage, you know, if when you're menuing, say it out loud. So you menu till you get to hypothymus, and this is just the process that you go through. There's a few other things on here I want to show you. Over here we have the harmonization procedures. We've got a reminder at the top to never harmonize a sweetener. But you've got steps 1 through 5, which are for all harmonization procedures. But then once you get to 5, simple, short, B cell, T cell, then we've got those listed here, so you don't have to look them up. You've got them. In Module 2, we teach about timed problems and using the acupuncture Rotary clock. There's some specific things we've adapted for TBM for that, and that's all built into there. The frequency, the autonomic recovery program, 3 times for 2 weeks, all the way down to once a month for 2 months. That's just listed there as a reminder. Descending order of immune degeneration is for Module 3. As the immune system begins to unravel and the patient tumbles into pathological and potentially life-threatening conditions, this is the process that we found the body goes through. So that's just here as a reminder with that. We have the phases of healing that we cover in Module 1. So you have those there as a reminder. You can test to see where your patients are at and have that there for them to review with them. Reminder of the TBM basics. This is the logo for the process of backward thinking. We start with the symptom. We think of all the multiple factors that could be combining to create that symptom, and then all the causes that could be causing those factors back to hopefully the root cause. So when we effectively backward think, we actually get to the root cause, which typically requires very few corrections. That's why in a 15-minute session, you get through several symptoms. If you're cleaning up every single dot, it'll take you like 4 sessions to get through one symptom. But if we get down to these ultimate ones, a lot of times it's just one thing. That's how we can be more efficient. So that's the backward thinking graphic. Remember blood pressure ratio in module 1. So this shows those steps there to remind us, and the TVM water levels. So, and we have a goal in TVM, and that is we want a well-trained, compassionate healer within reach of all humankind, within reach financially, geographically, and otherwise, no later than my birthday when I turned 110, 2074. And up here, reminder, issues that are not resolved on an energetic level will eventually manifest on a physical one. You know, remembering that patients, they look at your wall charts. And part of the design behind this wall chart is to help the doctor, but it's also to elevate the patient's own internal conversation and kind of bring them into a level of awareness that's more synchronous with how we see things in TVM. And then we've got a quote from Viktor Frankl. It was a conversation that he had with Dr. Tim Francis many years back. Dr. Francis said to me that Viktor Frankl leaned over and said, "You know, Tim, I think menuing is the most important tool we have in TVM. Do you agree?" And Dr. Francis said, "Yeah, I agree." One, because you never disagreed with Dr. Frank. But two, because he's right. Menuing this so dramatically simplifies the process. Remember, we talked about in Module 1 that subtle influences can have profound effects on physiology. And our job is to leverage the subtle influences at our disposal for healing to restore our patients to health, sanity, etc., to a joyful life. But of all the things that are out there, how do we find those subtle influences to wield? And this is that process that Victor put together. Dr. Erica Statman is the one that said, let's put together a poster, and she put the first one that we used for a few years, and then we kind of revamped it, and this is the current one that we've got. Oh, and I like this here. Providing an alternative to disease since 1978. Total body modification.